Israel has been found to be potentially committing a genocide by the International Court of Justice, and that ruling for any country should be a moment of intense shame. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't do shame. Here was his response.
Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people. Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it. On the eve of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, I again pledge as Israel's Prime Minister, never again. Israel will continue to defend itself against Hamas, a genocidal terror organization. On October 7th, Hamas perpetrated the most horrific atrocities against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and it vows to repeat these atrocities again and again and again. Our war is against Hamas terrorists, not against Palestinian civilians. We will continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to do our utmost to keep civilians out of harm's way, even as Hamas uses civilians as human shields. We will continue to do what is necessary to defend our country and defend our people.
The idea that Benjamin Netanyahu has any kind of commitment to international law is just a joke. And it's not actually just, Benjamin Netanyahu, right? Whoever's been in power in Israel, they have been, since 1967, pursuing, overseeing, actively implementing the longest running occupation, the longest running illegal occupation in the world right now. Right? The UN says Israel should go back to its 1967 borders. That's a UN resolution which Israel has consistently ignored. The UN also has a resolution saying that the settlements are illegal. Israel has ignored those. Right? The UN also has a resolution saying Palestinians have a right to return. The Israelis have ignored that. Right? So Israel historically has had no commitment to international law, also not a member of the International Criminal Court. What might they be afraid of? Why might Netanyahu not want to be held to account? Why might he not want to stand in the dock and speak about his responsibility for what's going on in Palestine? I'd say because he's probably got a decent idea that he's guilty of quite a lot, right? Netanyahu's response to the ruling was, of course, the most significant that we heard today as he runs the Israeli government. But the most grotesque response came from his cabinet colleague, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. And he said, "The decision of the anti-Semitic court in The Hague proves what was already known. This court does not seek justice, but rather the persecution of Jewish people. They were silent during the Holocaust, and today they continue the hypocrisy and take it another step further." Now, it's very important to note here, the International Court of Justice was founded in 1945, right? It was in part as a response to the Holocaust. It could not have intervened in the Holocaust. It did not exist. On Twitter, Ben-Gvir was also active. He posted, "The Hague Schmeg." Wow. I'm joined now by Aaron Bastani. These reactions from Israeli politicians, Netanyahu, of course we've got the utmost commitment to international law, but we're going to keep on doing what we're doing. And then his national security minister, the Hague Schmeg, who cares? Who cares what they say? Who cares if they said that there's a plausible case that we're committing genocide?
Michael, for people watching or listening to this, just imagine if Dmitry Medvedev or Vladimir Putin did that tweet in the immediate aftermath of the ICJ making a certain ruling against them. The Hague Schmeg. Not even saying that you're wrong or I disagree, but actually trivializing the entire process of international law and accountability. And the idea that nation states have to adhere to certain rules. Now, you might expect Putin to do it. But clearly, our political class and much of the media would subsequently respond with the rightful claim that this betokens a man who is illiberal, undemocratic, a monster. And yet Ben-Gvir can do precisely that, and it's a country that we're arming, giving political support to, maintaining extensive trade ties with. There seems to be a different set of rules here, doesn't there? In relation to Benjamin Netanyahu, he's saying that Israel is being treated so differently to the rest of the world. If any other country on earth was attacked, it would defend its own borders. Here's the thing, Michael. Israel isn't like any other country, or nearly any other country, because it's not actually clear what its international borders are or what it wants them to be. I've repeatedly been asked, well, surely if you were a Jewish person and you lived in Israel, given what happened on October 7th, you would want strong borders. Sure, have strong militarized borders, but have the borders. They don't have borders. That border between the Gaza Strip and southern Israel isn't a border per se. It's all Israel because it's occupied. The West Bank is not really a border. And Hamas, by the way, weren't operating in the West Bank. They were coming out of Gaza. So, there's a deep fundamental duplicity with what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. First, you're absolutely right to say he doesn't give two hoots about international law. He's quite open about the basis of Israeli policy under his government is might makes right. Absolutely everything else is of secondary importance at best. That's the first issue. And then this idea about borders, we have to protect our borders. The entire basis of this political question is the fact you won't have international borders. The world is saying you are illegally settling a certain territory. Could you please return to pre-1967 borders? And you won't. If Israel did that and subsequently militarized their borders, I don't like militarized borders. It's not great to have, barbed wire and towers and guns everywhere. But I could understand it, like the demilitarized zone in Korea. I'd understand it. It would be a coherent statement for Netanyahu to make. But that isn't what they're doing. And Michael, look, these people can say what they like. Ben Gvir, by the way, Ben Gvir is absolutely the worst possible expression of a deeply toxic society, which Israel is. He's one of these two political parties which won't even let women stand in elections. And here's a question really for people that are supporting Israel right now, whether they're British, German, Dutch, American. What kind of international order do you want in the 21st century? Do you want countries to be able to do this and say, hey, schmeig, and your country sort of uncritically supports them, boosts them, defends them? Or do you want a world order where actually people are held accountable for what they do? We don't have illegal wars of aggression. We don't have citizens viewed as kind of, that's fine, collateral damage. Because we've had 25,000 people die, Michael, the overwhelming majority of which have nothing to do with any of this. Thousands of children, women giving birth to kids, having C-sections without anesthetic. They've got nothing to do with what happened on October 7th. This is collective punishment. This is a war crime, besides the charges of genocide, in my opinion. That, for me, is the big question, Michael. What kind of world order do our politicians want? Because that frightens me, the potential answer to that question, because I don't quite know anymore.